Hey everybody, Marcus here. I've never involved myself in YouTube drama, nor do I particularly desire to start. However, there have been a number of incidents where this community of ours has been fleeced of money. Whether or not the intention of those doing the fleecing was there from the start or just played itself out that way, the fleecing took place nonetheless. One example is Mayor of MGTOWN. Mayor of MGTOWN raised around $7,000, well, from my recollection, to run a homeless outreach project. He did follow up to a minor extent, but nowhere near did he supply evidence to account for all the money he raised. The last video he put out that related to that money had the mayor showing us land that he bought in some desert with some vague allusions to it being devoted to MGTOW or something silly like that. Ultimately, though the mayor seemed to have good intentions, he failed miserably in execution, which ultimately resulted in the same outcome as if he were running a scam from the start. The same scenario occurred with Barbarossa. Barbarossa raised several thousands of dollars in order to fund the writing of a MGTOW book, which he ultimately has yet to deliver after 2 years. In fact, Barbarossa has completely stopped creating content altogether. Though I do not believe Barbarossa was running a scam, the outcome, again, was very much the same as if he were. The point is that both these men demonstrated moral failings sufficiently egregious to warrant the accusation of scammer, even if those accusations may not accurately reflect their intentions. I see this situation occurring once again. Chris Cantu has been advertising his invention of the red pill coin and currently has an active ICO in place. Now, I will explain the term ICO in a moment. Firstly, I do not know Chris's intentions other than what he publicly advertises. I need not infer maliciousness into them in order to know that the outcome of the red pill coin will end up a scam in the same manner as that of what happened with the mayor of MGTOWN and that of Barbarossa. Simply put, Chris is either grossly naive, ignorant, or a con artist with his red pill coin initiative. Now, you might be asking yourself, Marcus, what justifies you in your beliefs? Well, let me step you through my thought process and you draw your own conclusions. Firstly, I need to explain a little bit about my background and what I do for a living. As many may know, I am a software developer. However, I am not merely a developer, but an entrepreneur running a software company with several members of staff, venture capital backing, and a very relevant product roadmap to the issue I'm talking about in this video. You see, I run a blockchain company. Not only do I run a blockchain company, but my company is in the process of issuing its own ICO. Now, an ICO, for those who do not know what that is an acronym that stands for Initial Coin Offering. ICOs are a relatively new thing in the tech space. They started creeping up only really in the last 2 years or so. An ICO serves a function oftentimes very similar to an IPO. An IPO, or initial public offering, is when a company, for the first time ever, starts selling their stock to the general public on the stock exchange. The IPO is when the company is said to have gone public. So, what is the purpose of an IPO? Well, to raise money, and, well, other reasons irrelevant to this video. When a company first starts out, it normally needs to be funded by money coming from the founders or from private investors. However, at some point, it may make sense to raise money from the general public. This is done by undergoing an IPO and selling shares to anyone who wants to buy them. The shares that you buy in turn come with certain rules and rights for both the seller and the buyer. The company offering the shares is either going to issue a dividend on profits to the buyer, or the buyer is merely speculating on the stock price based on their prediction of the future performance of the company. So now that we talked about an IPO, let us talk about the purpose of an ICO. An ICO, or initial coin offering, has mostly been done when a company wishes to raise money without selling off ownership of the company. This is what many blockchain companies have done. For a blockchain company, it makes sense to sell a custom crypto token and retain 100% ownership of the company, as opposed to selling equity. However, when you sell equity, what secures the value of the stock is the value and performance of the company. Namely, a seller buys stock in a company because in some way that entitles them to a portion of the profits that that company makes. This, however, is not the case when a company sells crypto tokens in an ICO. So, what backs the value of a token sold through an ICO? Well, whatever the company selling the tokens defines as the backing value. Before putting up an ICO, a blockchain company will write a white paper defining the rules governing the crypto token. Imagine the white paper as a long essay that explains to you the mechanism by which the tokens you are buying will actually be worth something. Let me give you a concrete example. When Civic, a blockchain-based real-world identity platform, raised 33 million in their ICO round, they promised the buyers a number of things. Firstly, Civic promised that they will build out a very specific feature set appended to their already existing and robust platform. Additionally, Civic promised that the tokens themselves can be redeemed to leverage the services of that platform. So, let us break down what Civic did. Firstly, Civic already built a platform with private investment. From what I recall, they have privately raised 3.8 million, which they used to build this platform of theirs. Then they decided to raise more money, but this time through an ICO. They promised the buyers of their crypto token that the money they raised in the ICO would go towards developing substantial expansions of their existing platform, and that the buyers of the token can trade their coin on open exchanges if they wish to speculate, or they can use those tokens to directly pay for real business services that Civic was developing. So, the Civic's coin's value was ultimately based on the fact that you can pay for their real-world identity platform with their coin. Sort of like putting a quarter into an arcade machine. Civic's coin was grounded in real value, as Civic's pricing was in fiat currency, and Civic told you exactly how much service you would get for any given coin in the future. In this way, Civic used the ICO model in the same way as near to 99% of all companies that issue ICOs. They used the ICO as a cash raising mechanism to fund their business and guaranteed the coin against something they could control. But let me give you guys some behind the scenes insight into what goes into a legitimate ICO. And when I use the word legitimate, I mean an ICO that has every intention of seeing its crypto token purchasers get their money back and then some. Firstly, you need to have a business model that incorporates the crypto token, whereby the token itself is fed value externally to the token itself. Secondly, you need to have all your legal work in place. You cannot, for example, all willy-nilly just launch an ICO from a company operating just anywhere in the world. Crypto tokens are a gray area in most countries. The safest bets are the Isle of Man, Switzerland, and Singapore, as those are the places where crypto token sales have clear and friendly laws applicable to them. This, of course, means lawyer fees. The lawyers that my company is using, for example, have a number of ICOs in the work, and this is a firm that represents some of the largest tech companies in the industry. An average ICO costs around 80,000 in legal fees if you, as a buyer, expect the token to come with the seal of approval from a solicitor firm, which, I would hope would be the bare minimum standard a purchaser would look for in their due diligence process. Next comes the board of backers. The board of backers is like a review committee composed of notable industry experts who the company selling the crypto token have composed to review the white paper and vouch for the integrity of the project. If you look at any large successful ICO, you will see the names of important men backing that ICO. This, in addition to the legal credibility of the ICO, gives social proof to the buyers that experts have confirmed what the seller is offering is realistic. Obviously, in order to convince any industry relevant person to even look at your ICO, you need to offer them something. Usually, the offer comes in the form of part ownership of the coins themselves, and sometimes equity in the company. When you add up all the costs in putting together an ICO, it is no surprise that most companies reserve upward of 1% of the tokens themselves to cover the costs alone. Now, these are the sort of things you can come to expect from a serious ICO. But let us look at the actual technical detail of issuing the actual crypto tokens. Crypto tokens cost near to nothing to create. You're literally printing money. As such, from a technical point of view, putting up an ICO costs near to nothing. I can go out and create 100 different tokens in near infinite quantities with virtually no effort. Well, so can you. In fact, anyone with a little blockchain knowledge can do this. But how is this possible? Because you literally use existing free tools and software for everything involved in the process. For example, The wallet you would use to store any token created on the Ethereum blockchain can be any of the countless wallets created by any of the countless open source projects out there. These tokens work out of the box in terms of exchange, and all of these custom-made tokens have all the security features, privacy features, and countless other features of the underlying blockchain upon which they were created. This means that issuing these tokens requires no real work, and you end up with a token almost as feature-rich as, say, a Bitcoin. So where is the value in the token if anyone can issue the shit on a whim? Like I previously said, the value will only be that which is injected into it externally by the issuer. If I issue a million Marcus coins and back them up with nothing, well, then the coins are worth nothing. With all this groundwork laid out, let us look at the red pill coin. The red pill coin has a website, which I have linked to in the description. On that site, you will find the white paper describing the coin. The 21-page white paper, which, to someone who does not have domain knowledge of blockchain, reads very impressively. In fact, it is very impressive. It is very impressive because 99% of that paper is talking about what comes out of the box from issuing your coin on the Ethereum blockchain. This white paper is more of a love letter to the Ethereum blockchain and not a white paper talking about the red pill coin. 99% of that white paper is true about every other ERC20 token, including the one my company will be putting out. So let's get to the 1% that is specifically unique to the red pill coin. The first unique element is the following paragraph. The red pill coin represents more than just a cryptocurrency. It is a community with a shared philosophy for greater control and autonomy over its finances. It is not just another altcoin, but rather it is a representation of the freedom to use one's funds anonymously. All of these core philosophies are built into the architecture and main features of Red Pill, making it a one-of-a-kind cryptocurrency. Okay, so let us break that down. The red pill coin represents more than just a cryptocurrency. It is, therefore, if nothing else, a cryptocurrency meant to act as a form of money. All right, gotcha. So far, it is identical with Bitcoin, Ether, Litecoin, and so on. Next, it says, it is a community with a shared philosophy for greater control and autonomy over its finances. But hold on a moment. The red pill coin is a community now? A community who share a philosophy for greater control and autonomy over its finances? Well, that sounds like pretty much the sentiment of anyone investing in any cryptocurrency whatsoever. Does the Bitcoin owner not share this desire? Well, surely he does. So, two sentences in, and the red pill coin is still no different than Bitcoin, Ether, and so on. Next, the white paper says, it is not just another altcoin, but rather it is a representation of the freedom to use one's funds anonymously. Well, I don't know about you, but I do distinctly remember mentioning that any token created in the blockchain shares the same set of faculties out of the box. Since this is true, then the anonymity present in the red pill coin is the same anonymity, say, Ether holders would experience. Three sentences in, and still the red pill coin is no different in kind to Bitcoin, Ether, Litecoin, and so on. And the last sentence. All of these core philosophies are built into the architecture and main features of Red Pill, making it a one-of-a-kind cryptocurrency. Well, it surely is true that the philosophies are built into the architecture of the Red Pill coin because this philosophy is built into the Ethereum blockchain as well as the Bitcoin blockchain architecture, so technically this is correct. The last part of the sentence, however, is false, namely the sentence, making it a one-of-a-kind cryptocurrency. This part is completely false. The red pill coin is literally identical in both features, function, and philosophy to every single other cookie-cutter token popping up on the Ethereum blockchain. But perhaps I jumped to conclusions too quickly. Indeed, I'm actually mistaken. There is something radically unique about the red pill coin not present with Bitcoin, Ether, and every other coin on the Ethereum blockchain. My apologies. This difference comes out in the second paragraph of what is unique in the 1% of the white paper. The second paragraph from the white paper says, the target plan for the initial distribution of red pill coins begins with an initial coin offering, ICO, of 100 million coins. The total supply of red pill coins is 200 million, which means that the ICO will account for 50% of the total supply. In subsequent years, 10 million coins will be made available until the total currency amount is reached. The minimum bidding price for the coin auction will be determined by the current market value of red pill coins as at the time of the sale. Red pill coins will be listed based on Ethereum upon release, with 1 Ether being equivalent to 5,361 red pills. There are two very important things to take from this paragraph. Firstly, that the coin is capped at 200 million units, and that the initial price for the red pill coin in the ICO will be 5,361 red pill coins to 1 Ether. The price of 1 Ether at the point of writing this script is at 760 American dollars. So, for 760 American dollars, you can own 5,361 red pill coins. This means you are paying 14.2 cents per coin. Chris is selling 100 million coins in the ICO at the price of 14.2 cents per coin, which means that if the ICO sells out, he will have banked $14,176,459 in the ICO. If he sells the additional 100 million coins he intends to sell at, say, the same price, that will leave him with a total of $28,352,919 for the entire lot of all red pill coins to ever be created. However, let us forget about the second 100 million of the coins and just go with the ICO sum itself. You see, this is what the red pill coin can do that neither Bitcoin nor Ether can do. The red pill coin can bank Chris $14.2 million. Chris cannot issue Bitcoin or Ether, well-established and trusted cryptocurrencies, mind you, but he can issue the red pill coin and bank that 14.2 million in an ICO. And what, pray tell, is Chris offering in exchange for $14.2 million? After all, like I mentioned with the Civic ICO example, Civic offered to give you services in exchange for their coins. What does Chris offer? Well, this is revealed further in the white paper. The section describing the two-stage plan that Chris is proposing is as follows. Stage 1. The first stage of Red Pill's technical implementation was the development of the coin itself. By making the coin ERC20 compliant, it is now capable of being stored and traded on multiple platforms. Stage 2. The second stage of the technical implementation is the development of a Chrome extension and mobile apps that will allow users to easily store or send red pills to their favorite content creators, bloggers, etc. The extension and apps work by allowing users to enter an Ethereum address of the creator or person that they want to send funds to, or to search for verified users on the platform, and will have a little check mark like on the YouTube and Twitter next to a verified creator's name, verifying that they are the creators, public figures that they claim to be. This will also make it easier for people to quickly send funds. There you have it, guys. Chris wants to build you a Google Chrome plugin to send red pill coins with. He will also build an iOS and Android app to send these coins. These apps, I can imagine, will take the form of an out-of-the-box existing open source wallet, white labeled to whatever he wants it to be. Chris will give you things you basically get out of the box already in any wallet you can get for free. All of this for a mere $14.2 million. Let me give you guys some context on the work involved with what Chris is proposing. When we hired interns in my company, the guys we hired were pretty ignorant of blockchain development. So we gave them a throwaway exercise in which they had to build an Ethereum wallet to help them learn blockchain. Well, Chris is literally offering you what I have in the past considered a throwaway project to teach interns on. Think about that. But, perhaps I'm misinterpreting the nature of the project Chris is proposing. Perhaps I did not read the details of stage 2 correctly. After all, stage 2 can, in some sense, be interpreted as some form of Patreon-like app, but it uses red pill coins as opposed to fiat currency. Well, this itself should already raise red flags, as there's literally no need for a crypto token to do this, as fiat currency will necessarily need to be involved regardless. A crypto token only allows for mostly free transactions within the ecosystem, as gas is involved. And though mostly free transactions are a good thing, there is no reason to advertise the mechanism as a feature in of itself, as people will still need to swipe a credit card to buy these coins. This means that you are advertising a crypto token for the sake of saying you have a crypto token. Now, let us take this as the genuine intent and say that Chris wants to build some sort of red pill coin Patreon knockoff. How are we to look at this ICO from that point of view? After all, now it seems to be moving into similar grounds of what ICOs are meant for, namely to raise money for project work. Under this interpretation, the buyers of the red pill coin are, in essence, meant to act as investors in a startup where they get no equity in return for their investment. So, it must be the case that Chris is backing up the value of the red pill coin with something else. But alas, he is not. Nowhere in the white paper is any promise made based on any clear business model of injecting value into the red pill coin to justify anyone parting with even a broken cent in buying it. Now, this is the first problem with the plan, the total absence of an actual business model. But there are other problems with this plan. Chris is a marketing guy. Where's his development team? Where's the proof of concept to demonstrate he is even capable of organizing a software project? What could anyone possibly use as a basis in justifying and handing this man $14.2 million? What is his track record in developing software projects? Who is he competing with? What is his marketing plan? Where will this $14.2 million go? How long is it meant to last? What is the corporate structure? Who are the directors? None of these questions have answers. Now, let me tell you how this project could be executed if Chris was actually serious in bringing this into being. I will tell you how I would manage this whole red pill coin initiative. Firstly, I would make good friends with a couple of software developers. After all, Chris is a marketing guy. Secondly, I would design the core mobile offering and bring a proof of concept into being, which fulfills the core use cases. Next, I would write up a comprehensive business plan. I would pilot the proof of concept on a subset of the MGTOW community to wager the appetite for actually using it. Next, if viable, I would finish up the dev work to get a closed beta going on a small scale on a test blockchain using a throwaway coin to collect user feedback. All of this would be done on my dime, of course. It has to be done on my dime because I know that no sane investor would even look at me unless I had already done this at a minimum. Finally, if I concluded that this red pill coin Patreon knockoff had any evidence for its viability, then I would go maybe for an ICO for a reasonable sum of money that can see me through around 3 years of runway to profitability. The red pill coin I would back with some exclusive monetizable feature accessible only through spending these red pill coins and make my promises to the buyers on that. I would identify a law firm with experience in ICOs and make sure I'm not breaking any laws in my ICO. I would properly identify the jurisdictional regions where it is legal for me to sell such a coin, as it is not legal to do so everywhere. In the meantime, I would court a venture capital fund because I understand that running a successful business is more than about raising money. I would make sure the VC I found had proper connection amongst its coterie of high net worth individuals to help push through my marketing, as well as provide guidance on how to scale the business internationally. I would be sourcing industry experts to vouch for my ICO, as well as for building up my board of directors with at least 2 independent directors and potentially 1 credibility director. However, Chris has done none of these things that I can infer from any of the material he provided. If he did do these things, well, he would be advertising them openly and vocally. And to me, this proves that he is entirely incapable on delivering on even my generous interpretation of this project, much less delivering a profitable business when the money runs out. My predictions are as follows. Firstly, he will fall grossly short of his anticipated 14.2 million ICO round. If the sum of money is less than a million raised, it will most likely be pocketed and some token effort will be presented with a "sorry guys, but we run out of money to finish the project" message. However, I suspect he will raise less than 100,000 in total, which in turn will most likely be pocketed, as it will be interpreted by Chris and his co-founders that that sum is insufficient to execute on their vision. If anyone listening to this video bought into the red pill coin, I recommend you get your money back and then judge Chris on his behavior when you ask for it back. If Chris is serious, he will honor the returns and perhaps take the content of this video to heart, chalk up this incident as a false start, and try again in the manner I have enumerated, with an ICO happening only when he has all his ducks in line. Not only when the ducks are in line, but when he has any evidence for him himself believing that this project has any merit whatsoever other than faith. The Red Pill Coin ICO is worse than a Kickstarter campaign right now. In a Kickstarter campaign, at least the backers know exactly what rewards they are entitled to based on the sum they pledged. In the Red Pill Coin ICO, based on the white paper, you are entitled to literally nothing other than the possession of the Red Pill token itself, while the coin itself, as advertised in the white paper, is backed by nothing. The sentiment that as soon as the coin comes into being, some fairy will fly around and sprinkle some dust on the coin, causing it to magically go up in value, is the lunatic pipe dream of the ignorant. Ask yourself one simple question. Why would any content producer want to receive a red pill coin as opposed to Bitcoin? Thanks for listening. Go team.